It is NFL trade deadline day, and coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, does Howie Roseman have another move up his sleeve? The deadline is looming at 4 o'clock Eastern time. All moves have to take place before that, and whatever happens, we have you covered. That's why you subscribe to the channel. We'll talk about some trade targets and some trade rumors on today's show, and hopefully Howie does bolster this roster a little bit. Join the 60,000 plus people worldwide who have already subscribed to the show if you want daily updates and shows on the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's begin here with this tweet from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Jaylon Johnson is one of the top cornerbacks in the National Football League, currently playing for the Chicago Bears. They got dusted in primetime this week against the Los Angeles Chargers. And Johnson is in the final year of his rookie deal, and he understands that he wants to get paid. He's a really good player. He's basically setting up his market right now by being one of the top corners in the NFL. And he's not sure if his long-term future is with the Chicago Bears, who, even though they traded for Montez Sweat today, one of the big moves to already take place, that organization, precarious future, and Johnson might want to play for a contender. So with that, he has requested a trade according to sources. Chicago granted him permission to do that, looking for a new home before Tuesday's NFL trade deadline. The player and the team negotiated a new contract last week, but could not come close to a deal, so a talented corner is now available. More from Jeremy Fowler from late last night that the Bears and Johnson's agent, Chris Ellison, have the next 7 hours to swing a deal. He obviously said this very early this morning. Teams I've talked to believe that the San Francisco 49ers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Philadelphia Eagles have been in the corner market to some degree. Now, Philadelphia can be in the corner market and not look for a player like Jaylon Johnson if they want to go something cheaper, because you might have to sign Johnson to a contract extension. Howie Roseman could look there. As for the Eagles' trade needs going into deadline day, we'll talk about that coming up here in a little while. More from Ed Warder, and I want to pop this up because I think it's important, right? I think the Philadelphia Eagles, and even though the Niners have lost 3 straight games, are the top 2 teams in the NFC. So if San Francisco, whose defense has really struggled during this 3-game losing streak, trades for a player like Jaylon Johnson, that's a massive acquisition. And Ed Warder with this, that the Niners and Bills, among those discussing potential deals for him, and the Cowboys, as of right now, up to this point, have not been involved. Everything that I've heard, the price is a little bit too high for Jaylon Johnson and the Dallas Cowboys to get into the mix. As for those of you who don't know who Johnson is, you want some background on the player, I really want this show to be as informative as possible. So here you go. 24 years old, 2020 second-round pick out of Utah. Love what Kyle Whittingham does there. If I could pick one coach to play for in the country, I mean, he might be in the top 5. Jaylon Johnson in the final year of his rookie deal. That's why there's a little bit of pressure to get a deal done, and that's why him and the Bears were talking about that contract extension, or for him to go somewhere else and maybe negotiate a future contract. Final year of his rookie deal obviously has a lot of implications in this, because a trade may require a contract extension for the guy who's been the number 3 graded overall cornerback in the NFL this year, according to Pro Football Focus. As for his grades this year, 84.4 overall, his coverage grade 85.8. When quarterbacks target him, he is allowing a passer rating of 37.3. That's truly elite right there. He has 2 interceptions. Both of them came 2 weeks ago. One of them was a pick 6, and big sample size here, 220 coverage snaps. And you look at what he's been able to do in his NFL career. Some games missed, couple his rookie year, a couple in 2021. Last year played 11 games. I'd hit pause on that. Certainly a little bit of a concern. What I love, though, consistently has a knack for making a play on the football. His rookie year, 15 pass breakups, allowed a completion percentage of 56.4. Year 2, 9 pass breakups, the completion percentage still under 60. Last year, 7 pass breakups in 11 games, completion percentage a tick under 59, and this year, a completion percentage at just 50 with a low passer rating allowed, as we talked about a little while ago. And areas to address for Howie Roseman and this front office going into deadline day. Slot corner. Now, Jaylon Johnson is more of an outside corner. In fact, he's a very elite one. The thought, I think, for Philadelphia and their point of view, or bird's eye view, no pun intended, is that if you go Jaylon Johnson as your trade target, you move James Bradberry into the slot. He's the one that the Eagles experimented with playing in the slot after Avonte Maddox went down. And then the Eagles got carved up there, and James Bradberry went back out to the outside. He seemed to lost a little bit of a step, like the touchdown that he got beat on Sunday against Washington by Terry McLaurin. Little stutter go. He dusted him. I mean, he left James Bradberry in the rear view. So Bradberry would move in the slot if you trade for Jaylon Johnson. But you could also go running back. Running back targets coming up. Off-ball linebacker, we're going to talk about that position. And edge rusher depth. All of the areas that I think Philadelphia could address today. So what say you? Should the Eagles trade for one of the top young corners in the National Football League? T for trade, P for pass. Remember, Howie Roseman's a genius with the cap, right? They have a lot of draft compensation over the next couple of years, but you'd have to give him a contract extension. Share your thoughts down below in the comments. Still to come on today's show, Eagles trading for a linebacker. Could a former Eagle be returning? We're also going to take a look at some running back trade targets as well. First, though, shout out Prize Picks for not only being the sponsor of today's show, but being the best daily fantasy sports app that you can have and that you can download. And it's the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. It's easy and exciting daily fantasy, and we have a great deal for the Berg Gang. Up to a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Why I love this app? Daily Fantasy Sports made easy. Largest independently run DFS app in North America. They have these daily specials and discounts that allows you to stack up some wins and win real easy money. You get that up to $100 deposit match. And now that the NBA season is here, James Harden no longer with the Sixers. Hallelujah. You can combine your NBA and NFL picks. On Sunday during the watch party, these are the 3 picks that we were rooting for, and they hit. So if you want to tail me, follow me on X, Twitter, at Chase_Senior, or watch the show because I release a lot of my picks. I had Devontae Smith, more than 4.5 receptions. Joey Slye, more than 5.5 kicking points. Haason Reddick got that clutch sack late for us to win some money. $100 deposit match. prizepicks.com/CLNS. We'll put that link down below in the comment section as well as in the description of this video. All right. Eagles eyeing a linebacker. Let's get to that next. According to Albert Breer, another NFL insider, 2 names to watch for Philly. Jordan Hicks, the former Eagle, won a Super Bowl with this team. And Josey Jewell, Reuben Frank with this one too, that we'll get to in a little while. This is an Eagles move that actually happened on yesterday on Monday, that the Eagles have traded defensive tackle Katavius Street and a 2025 7th-round pick to the Falcons for a 2024 6th-round pick. Street, the Niners' 4th-round pick in 2018, played 87 defensive snaps in 8 games, possibly opens up a roster spot for Cam Jurgens. Chip, you can go to me full screen here real quick, because let's go back to the linebackers. And let's talk about Jordan Hicks. Let's talk about Josey Jewell. So Minnesota Vikings in a very interesting spot. They started off poorly. Now they're on a little bit of a tear. They are in the mix right now in the NFC North, even though the Detroit Lions, 1 game back in the win column from the Philadelphia Eagles to get home field advantage up to this point in the NFC. Jordan Hicks is a really good player. Obviously, the Eagles' defensive scheme right now is different than what it was when he was playing under Jim Schwartz, but an instinctual player, a smart player, and a guy who's really good for the culture. And even though he doesn't have familiarity with this defense, has familiarity with this organization. Getting a little bit older, but he's always been an instinctual player. A couple of stops since going to Philadelphia. Arizona, he played really well there, playing well now for Minnesota. And that's an off-ball linebacker that certainly helps you. And along that same conversation, Josey Jewell is another player who could also help you for a team that, even though the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs last week in a surprise upset on the slate this past weekend, you know, they could be selling to, looking to get back some assets. So Jordan Hicks, Josey Jewell, 2 potential linebacker targets on top of the bevy of trade targets that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. And then you go to running back. That's another area I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles need here to bolster this roster. And this isn't a slight on DeAndre Swift, but Swift has always been a banged-up player who has durability concerns. I've said it here on the show. As far as talent level, jump cuts, quickness, explosiveness, athleticism, he's the closest Eagles running back to LaShawn McCoy that Philadelphia has had, but there's a reason why the Eagles continue to play Kenny Gainwell. And Gainwell, a costly fumble inside the 5 that luckily didn't affect the Eagles winning that game against Washington. It certainly made things a little bit more arduous in trying to mount that comeback, but I think the Eagles could benefit from picking up another running back. So these running backs could be available. I know the Giants continue to say, we're not trading Saquon Barkley. Tennessee Titans are saying that about Derrick Henry. If you could trade a running back on an expiring contract for some decent draft compensation or players, if you don't pull the trigger on a deal like that and you have no thoughts or no plans on having that player on your roster in the future, it's organizational malpractice to not at least flirt with the idea of trading one of those players away. Speaking of a running back on an expiring deal, Josh Jacobs is another one. Now, with the Eagles, they like to go running back by committee. You don't need a bell cow running back in this offense, but the more the merrier, and Jacobs on the final year of his deal. And then James Conner has been a productive player too, led the NFL for non-quarterbacks and touchdowns a couple of years ago. So these are players who could be impact backs for you and at the very least add a little bit of depth to that Eagles running back core where you have a good running back room. I mean, Rashad Penny isn't even playing at this point, right? It's not even the rotation. So maybe the Eagles can cut him, free up some money, trade him away, and then you have a running back room of one of those players. You still use DeAndre Swift a lot as your lightning agent 0. You could still use Kenneth Gainwell, and you could still use Boston Scott as well. You want to bolster up your team with as much talent but also depth as possible. If you want to interact with me, a couple of ways for you to do that. Love hearing from all of you on social media. I'm on X at Chase_Senior. You can shoot me a message on Instagram at Chase_Senior. You can even hit me on email as well, chase@chatsports.com for those of you who prefer that. And sometimes it's honestly easier to actually just type on my computer and not with my Twitter fingers. All right, appreciate y'all for watching. If a big move happens today, we're going to cover it, might even go live. That's why you subscribe and turn on your notifications.